So look at this picture right here. Look at this picture right here. And you see Sydney Colson saying, glad you could make it. But look right here around where my cursor is circling. This is Gina Paradiso. This is the agent of Cheryl Swoops. And Cheryl Swoops suddenly has now said positive things about the Fever. And not even that positive about Caitlin, just not being negative about Caitlin. And this is an agent that has called Caitlin Clark obnoxious and privileged. Publicly called Caitlin Clark obnoxious and privileged. And now all of a sudden you've got her being in attendance, sending her player to the Indiana Fever. It's just a funny how the world works. It's funny how the world works. And what has now happened, and I said this, you can look back at some of my videos. Again, I upload so many videos that it's hard to pinpoint the exact ones. But I said this during free agency. When people were like, oh, we want X, Y, and Z player on the team. And then when I was like, you know what, I would still strongly consider Dejanay Garrington. That was my thing, because I was like, just basketball means more than not. Basketball is the most fit is the most important thing, regardless of what people say. And people were like, oh no, like she's a Caitlin Clark hater. And I was like, I can guarantee you that the team are going to sign some people that seem like public Caitlin Clark haters, which Sydney Colson seemed to be. She was public enemy numero dos at one stage. And her agent was public enemy number one at times. And that's the thing. We saw what happened at the All-Star break amongst players. The attitude towards the players towards Caitlin shifted massively at the All-Star break. Because, you know, they actually were able to, you know, see Caitlin Clark and not just go mad at Twitter fingers. But like, you've not only got that, you've now got all these other players like a Sydney Colson who's going to be there. And look, I don't think there's any player that has ever had a bad word to say about Caitlin Clark that played with Caitlin Clark. So I don't think so. Suddenly, Sydney Colson, who's close with all the old guard in the WNBA, probably fighting her case. And I would assume, from the Aces perspective, I'd say Kate Martin. Kate Martin fought her case as well, but obviously, Age's queen bee, I guess, in this league. So I don't think it made a difference there. But obviously, it boded well with Sydney Colson if she went out of her way to go play in Indiana. And the fact that we're now seeing an agent, and I don't like the whole stay on that side type argument, because I'm always of the opinion that opinions can change. That's what I always say. I always say opinions can change, and that's one thing that I just in general that I think is a good way to look at things in life. But at the same time, it is mad. It's mad that a few of the like genuine Caitlin Clark haters are changing sides. Like, this is Cheryl Swoops' agent. This is Cheryl Swoops' agent going straight to Indiana, obviously welcoming a player. But the first thing that player did was immediately work out. Probably handed, obviously this is not literal as a joke, probably handed a pair of Fever shorts by Caitlin Clark as soon as she walks in. Go work out. And yeah, it's genuinely like one of those things that you knew was going to happen. And people called me crazy for it. You genuinely knew it was eventually going to happen. That somebody was eventually going to, like, a quote-unquote old guard, someone that was deemed a Caitlin Clark hater, was going to join the Fever, and it would change everything. obviously we can all go through old tweets. Heck, we can go through the freaking Monica Zanano tweet from Sydney Colson herself. But like, if Caitlin not only gave the all clear, but was one of the people that suggested Sydney Colson, you would assume that there was not that either that tweet was either not that serious, or it had been accounted for, apologized for. Because we can't also forget that she did play with Monica Zanano last year, who was on the same team. Say not Monica Zanano, sorry. Kate Martin, who was on the same team as Monica Zanano. So maybe there was some sort of something there, and maybe there's context that it just looks worse on Twitter. I don't know. But at the end of the day, what we all knew was going to happen is happening. That regardless of what certain agents, certain people say, eventually it just becomes inevitable. Eventually players stop fighting their best interests and is like, you know what, going to Indiana is the smartest decision for my career. They will fight. A lot of the time players won't fight their best interests. The only problem is that there is another, it just seems like, and again, this is one thing where I'm not blaming AJ. It seems like the cult of the old WNBA worship the god that is AJ Wilson, it seems. Like, as some divine being. And that just seems to be the pushback now. But at the end of the day, it's going to be great once basketball starts again. Like, the training camp and everything post draft is going to be fine. Like, you're going to see some of the training camp stuff. Preseason starts. If I'm not mistaken, does preseason start of May? So, what is the preseason schedule? So the preseason, Fever's first game, yeah, the 3rd of May. So, like, we are, 5 weeks away from the first preseason games, which will be interesting. Like, they play 3rd, 4th, and 10th of May, and then with the season starting on the 17th, so they're going to have plenty of games anyway. But, yeah, that is pretty much it, lads. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are you guys one of the stay on this side people? Because I'm kind of the opposite with that. I'm really, really in the opposite of that. Like, I'm one of the opinions can change, and it's good to see people's opinions change. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. And it's just a mad old situation seeing an agent go from calling the star player in Indiana privileged to sending one of her players to Indiana and going to Indiana to while the player was being announced there. Anyway, yeah, that's the video. I'll see you guys.